Well, I think that we're on. Yes, we're on. Hello, this is Dale Matthews. This is our show. This is your show. This is me. This is Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Dale. Yes, I can confirm that you are on. I see a live sign.
When I first start, there's a little thing that obscures that. I don't know why. It's just wonderful engineering, and there wasn't any audio that told me that we were on. So anyway, so we're on now. Okay, thanks for joining us. Uh, we have news. Sometimes it's not very nice to be right about stuff. It'd be better if we were wrong. We did tell you that there was some question marks at the beginning about the recall of Simon Hare and the fellow that stepped forward to say, I'm going to do it. It sort of reminds me a little bit about kids who say, I can drive, you do this. No, that's not all there is to driving. And so, or I can lead the parade, you just put a stick up and down. No, there's a bit more to it than just a stick. Well, this fellow volunteered to say, I'm going to run the whole recall thing. And I wondered at the time, because he's kind of a borderline personality kind of guy, but aren't we all at times, really, when you think about it, especially Mike? And we just recently, what we've been trying to do is find out from the fellow, how's the recall going? Nicely, not like, what the heck is wrong with you? None of that kind of stuff. Just, could you please tell us the numbers? And at the very beginning, he said, well, I don't have the numbers yet, but we'll be having the numbers come in because it's a month into a 3-month process. So it's 1/3 over. They should be somewhere around 2,000 signatures at this point, at a minimum, or it's not going to make it. So we didn't see this guy for a long time. And he's the administrator, the guy that runs 2 different Facebook sites, one of them called Citizens to Recall Simon Hare. And so, boy, that's bouncing a lot. But I'm going to fix that. And so he wasn't showing up there. People were posting and talking about how well they put in their signatures, or how can we do it individually, or where shall we go to get this kind of stuff done. And there were a lot of people showing up. It seemed like a done deal. It seemed like something that should be easy to do. So I recently just got a Facebook posting from this fellow telling everybody what the current state is. And the current state is this. I had asked, and you judge for yourself whether you think I was being rude or not in the way that I said this. I asked the question, what are the recall totals so far? And Vivian, Kirkpatrick Pilger, said, Mark doesn't have any numbers last time I asked. And Mark Kelsey's answer was, no, but I'm also not going out of my way to count them all right now. If we make the numbers, we make the numbers. If not, no divine intervention will change that regardless of what is done.
Well, some devout Christians might differ with that. But that's interesting. Listen, you know what? The way I see this, most of the people I know would be looking to assist this thing in any way that they possibly could. And, maybe this guy isn't geared toward, dealing with people, helping him out or whatever. He doesn't take the requests for information as just that. Somehow he sees that as harassment or something of that nature.
Well, the reason I felt a little bit strange about the whole thing is my only other dealing with this fellow is that I had posted something about Simon Hare and what Simon's lawyer had said. It was about a 6-paragraph letter, and as I recall, I believe that I posted 4 out of 6 of the things because some of it was just blathery. And Mark Kelsey came on and said, if you don't print the whole thing right now, you're not a journalist, and I'm going to throw you off of this Facebook page. Whoa, that seems a bit of okay, I'll do it. Well, where is it? And I said, okay. So it was weird. And occasionally he'll say F this and F that. It sounds like Larry Graves at the airport. So I don't understand that. I wouldn't allow that if I was an admin on a site, and I certainly wouldn't be doing it if I was the admin. And so just got, just a few seconds ago, just before the show, I got another answer from Mark Kelsey saying, put this on your piddly ass show, F off. But he used the full thing for asking, what are the totals so far? It doesn't look so good, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to the next thing that we're going to do.
Either he's winning and not wanting to tell you about it, or that's telegraphing failure. And I tend to sort of think it's the other, because, you know, if I was running something like this, I think I would be right on top of it, and I would be wanting to tell people, because you know what, if you're underperforming, you tell people so that you can you know,
get a little help,
garner support there. And you know, if you're winning, you say, hey, listen, we're ahead of the thing here, but let's keep it rolling and make it decisive. You know, but you know, listen,
but everybody be careful now. Be careful, because if you jump all over this guy, I'm not going to do it anyway, because it doesn't do any good. But if you jump all over this guy, he may at some point be looking for someone. Aha, it was that email that I got from Bill Banker.
No, come on.
And that's the reason why, you know, I mean, or whatever. So
yeah, you can't do that. Listen, if you're a big boy and you step up to the plate and there's a responsibility here to do this thing, and you intentionally fall down on the job, then you're the one who's responsible for this guy. I mean, I think, you know, you're taking on a lot of responsibility, because then people go, I'm relying on you to do this. And it's almost as though, you know, if you don't perform, it's almost as though you're acting as an agent for this person to put up a fake recall so that nobody else does it, and intentionally, you know, take a dive. And that's not good either.
Is there any functional difference, really?
No,
when you think about it?
No, obviously not. Yeah. So whatever.
Okay. So that's the good news for this evening. Geez, this was a done deal. This is so simple. And you know, is it really true that we can't recall anybody? Can we elect anybody? I guess we'll find out in May, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that's sort of what was on my mind. Now, when I addressed the city council recently, nice segue, Dale, and I kind of wondered whether or not they're actually listening to us at the Grants Pass City Council meetings. I think that they are, and they are definitely responding to the emails that you sent them. But I decided to get their attention a little bit by pointing out that there are a number of common sense people in our community. Well, 78% of people in Grants Pass are common sense people about the city sales tax. So here is the thing without editing, Mike.
Hey, and before we play this, one thing, when I previewed this, I noticed that before you begin speaking, it sounds like Dan, what's his name? What's the guy's last name?
Dan DeYoung?
Dan DeYoung.
He's talking about Mark Collier?
He's talking about Mark Collier. What's he saying about him?
I don't know. I listened to that several times, and I can't quite figure it out, because Mark was in the audience, but he was kind of like,
right. Yeah, I mean, he says something about Mark Collier and like he withdrew it or something like that. I couldn't really get it, but it's only the couple of seconds before you begin speaking. So you know what? Let me make a quick adjustment to the audio on this so that it's
good ears. But I listened to it with headphones. I played it back a couple of times. Mark, did you know they're talking about you?
Listen, it's quite often that interesting things come from unintentional open microphones, and I just heard that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So you will hear that right as I begin playing this. So listen for that.
Dale Matthews, Grants Pass. So many citizens are looking forward to saying goodbye to a number of city councilors and perhaps the mayor, and also probably 2 out of 3 of the county commissioners. Then the question comes up, well, where are we going to find common sense people to come in and replace those? And I would posit that we've got plenty of common sense people in the city and in the county. Probably in this room? No? You. Would you mind coming up here for a second? Two people can come up because that happens all the time. What's your name?
Raymond Smith.
Okay, Ray, would you have voted, do you live in the city or out in the county?
No, I'm out Cave Junction.
Okay, would you have voted for a sales tax for Grants Pass if you had the chance?
No.
No. I think that qualifies him to be a city councilor.
Dale, this is your microphone. Would you
Yes.
please sit down, sir, so Dale can finish his
Many
public
times
comment?
two people come up. You just had two people come up.
That was during a proclamation, so please, Dale, this is your last chance to finish your public comment, 3 minutes tonight.
If you're going to keep
So-
changing the rules, I'm going to sit down now.
This is not a rule. This has always
And a
been.
county commissioner as well. So think about running for those. Thanks to the new.
Thank you, Dale. Much appreciated.
I think he's lying about that.
People get up, they have many times, many times. A couple people get up, husband and wife, a couple people from a neighborhood. They don't need to be invited to do so. It happens all the time. But when I do it, this one time, it's absolutely forbidden. Can you imagine the chaos, Mike? I mean, just it's so disruptive of the meeting. I mean, they could barely keep going. They almost just adjourned and all went home because they were so flummoxed by this thing.
Yeah, you took over the meeting,
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, the good news is, and we mentioned this last night, the night before, all the days are running together. This guy, he went out the next day and registered to run against Cheryl Walker. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Although, Dale,
Yes,
you being a big fan of not asking questions unless you know what the answer is.
Oh, I knew what
I
the
can-
answer was going to be. I was sure. There's.
So I mean, you knew the guy was there then, and
I don't
and you.
I don't think there's anybody in that audience that would have different. I took a risk. I ask you some questions sometimes where I don't know the answer. Oh, what was that one? What was the thing that we did where? Oh, you got on the Courier's fake poll and you took it live on the air. We didn't
Mhm.
know. So occasionally, yeah, I don't think that was that big a risk. If I thought there was 50-50 audience, I don't know if I would have done it, but I kind of figured that just about anybody in that audience would do that. And yeah, well, 78% of the population.
Right. It's the calculated risk there. And, at 78%, pretty good odds.
As one of our fans say, wow, you really know how to make a point. Whew, yeah. Yeah. Well, so this is a common sense guy. Does he sound, well, you can't tell from this. Does he sound common? You don't know that, but at
He
least
says, yeah, I live in Cave Junction. I think that's what he said. Yes. And I glean from that guy is, yes, I agree with everything he says
well,
so far.
obviously, you know what my point is. Common sense people would not have voted for a grants pass sales tax. These guys are telling each other that there's something wrong with us.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, it was a bit risky, but hey, that's the way I live my life. So yeah, I think
Out
the
on
guys-
the edge, hanging 10.
Yes. I used to
Okay.
do that, as a matter of fact. So anyway, so now comes into the part of the show which isn't quite as slam bang, and that is there are things that are happening in county and city government that you need to know about, although at first, and maybe at a second, they seem kind of boring. Okay, sorry about that, but that's just the way but they're not boring. And so the question I would ask you out there, because you're watching a political show, is there a reason why before the city and the county can pass an ordinance on the county side, if they're going to pass an ordinance, first time they've ever heard it, first time any of us have ever heard it, they have a first reading, and usually they ask to read by title only, and which doesn't usually say very much, of an ordinance. And then there's a 2-week delay. Why, Mike Jones? Is it a good idea to have that delay built into the process? What do you think?
Well, I'm assuming that once they have the first reading, that the that the draft of said ordinance is available for review, and then that people can take it and look at it and read it and go, well, okay, this is good, that's right, and oh, wait a minute, no, that has to go. I'm assuming that's why.
Right. If you're interested in having input from the public, which we've amply indicated that they're not interested, even when the public came up, they said, we didn't hear anything from the public, even though they were telling, and Dan DeYoung said that as well. You'll hear him comment about this tonight. If they're interested, what they would do is they would make sure the public has a copy of the presentation ahead of time, which did not happen in the city council meeting. You'll hear the guy say, "This, you haven't seen this before." And he said, "We haven't brought this up in a workshop." So this is the first time they've heard this about this change to an ordinance. And then you would see the whole presentation, and then hopefully as citizens or maybe even as council members, you would say, oh, that presentation was interesting. I'm going to think about that a little bit. Or you can say, no, let's go straight to a first reading of what the ordinance would be. Okay, so you have your first reading. Then what you would hope is that you would share that presentation with the populace, with the real boss, unless you're an imperial court, and the people would think about it, and then they would let you know what they think, because they've never seen it before. Or instead, what they did here is you go straight to a second reading. Really? All in the same night? And then you have your first reading. If you have your presentation, very first time, you have your first reading, okay, you have your second reading in the same meeting, and then you have your vote, all in the same meeting. Well, nobody's against it. Nobody knows anything about it. Of course, nobody's against it. Let's see how it goes. Just let it roll all the way through.
Anyone else wish to speak on a matter not on tonight's agenda? Okay, then. We'd close public comment. Item 4A is an ordinance amending municipal code that Jay will explain to us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, members of the public. This is a recommended ordinance change that we had not previously brought before you in a workshop session. This ordinance would amend the municipal code section 4.05.240 just to clarify the city's allowable use of a certain percentage of the transient room taxes that the city receives, which are legally restricted under state law for developing tourism-related facilities.
I'd like to make a motion that the ordinance be read by title only, first reading.
Seconded by Roy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. It is unanimous for a first reading. Please, Karen.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass amending Municipal Code Section 4.05.240 and clarifying tourism-related facility definition.
Thank you. Back to the council.
For what?
Nobody should feel pressured. Dennis?
Make a motion, we have a second reading of the ordinance title only, just because there is no apparent opposition to this or any reason to not vote on it tonight, so.
Okay, moved and seconded by Roy. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, please raise a hand. It is unanimous for a second reading. Please, Karen.
An ordinance of the
Hang on just a second here. Hang on just a second. Typically, a first reading of something is, it's listed on it as an agenda item, and then the next time, or maybe 2 weeks later, they have a second reading, and somebody gets up there and gets into detail. And because you massively edited this, I don't know whether or not somebody got up there and told them the details of what was going on. Did they?
Yeah, and at this particular point, it's kind of a cut and dried kind of thing. I mean, they've never been able to spend the money this way before, and now they wish to be able to spend the money on a wider variety of things. Now, whether it's this or marijuana or dogs and cats living together or whatever, okay, is the process being done the right way? What is the reason for a first
Yeah,
and second reading?
I figured that's what we were doing because
That's why I shortened it.
you know, I'm trying to figure out the substance of what it is they're talking about, and what we're analyzing here is procedure.
That's
And,
correct, sir.
A second reading typically takes place some days at least later than the first reading.
Well, their next public meeting would be 2 weeks later. Seems kind of a nice idea.
Right.
The real question isn't what were they voting on, as you said, Mike. The real question is, what is the reason? Why in the world would you have 2 readings at all? Why bother?
You would listen. This is a setup, okay?
Yes.
These guys all know that, and they're sitting up there and they're waiting for the cue to do what it is that they've been told to do, and you know, under the guise of needing some clarification about what you're talking about. Why don't you read that again? When in reality, what they're trying to do is get the first and second reading out of the way so they can all vote on it and go home.
And you never have the first and second reading, or you should not, especially one, he said at the beginning, you haven't seen this in a workshop, which means they haven't seen it. Okay.
Right.
So they have it in their little packet, but we haven't seen this. And we certainly haven't seen any of the presentation. You didn't see much of it either, but it was, you know, like a 5-minute presentation, and nobody in the public and none of the counselors had seen it. Now they're shown something, no matter what the subject is, they're shown something. Oh, well, I kind of like that, or I kind of don't, or whatever. Okay. Then the bosses, us, we should also they should think about it, in my opinion, but also we should get a chance to, let's think about that. Well, let me talk to my neighbor about, or whatever, right? But they don't want any input from us. They've made us very clear they don't want input from us, do they? And so this is just a further indication of the fact that input from pesky people out in the population, try saying that fast, is just goofing them up, right? They don't want that from us. And so why would they buy? And as Dennis Roller, the former editor of the newspaper, said, well, since we're not hearing any, well, no, of course you're not hearing anything. Right. Now, there was one person in the audience who stood up and said, you shouldn't be doing a first and second reading all in the same meeting. Okay. Nothing about the content, because nobody had any time to think about the content yet. Well, what are the ramifications? We do it all the time. That's one of the reasons we repeat things. It's one of the reasons we repeat things. It's one of the reasons we repeat things, because maybe you're going to want to think about it a little bit.
And listen, I can't help but be a little bit curious. What was the gist of this thing? And just, you know, very, very briefly, they wanted to do something different with the proceeds of the hotel taxes. Is that it?
Right. The hotel taxes at this moment, the ordinances that was set up originally with public input from hotel people and citizens and et cetera, would all go to the parks, because the parks are vital to our economic development in this area. Why, if we didn't have parks that were really held up, you know, in high esteem, why nobody would come here. We're going to talk about that on a future show. And so what they'd like to do is they'd like to be able to take that money and spend it in a bunch of other places.
I got an idea. How about put some money toward the jail and stuff like that? I don't know. I mean, just a thought.
Well, nobody would come here just for the jail. They might stay here for a while because of the jail.
You know what?
Hey, Mike, they might stay.
Do they
here
make
for a
any
while
money?
because-
Do they make any
you're
money
ruining
off
my
the
joke.
parks? Oh, I'm sorry.
They might stay here for a while because of the jail.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Very much. I'll be here all week.
Yes, do we make money off the parks? I mean, do we net a profit off of the park system?
All right. So we'll talk about that. They recently did some kind of study where they said, well, because you got to go to outside people to figure out what we've got here. And the outside people said, well, we've done this study because we did this survey of people staying in local hotels and motels. Okay. And when they got the results in, they found out, hey, guess what? People normally usually come here. The vast majority come here because they've got relatives in the area. Okay, not a lot you can do to promote that. Okay, come and visit Aunt Marjorie. Not your aunt? Well, she will be now. Okay.
Yeah.
And number 2 is they come in here to visit people that they know outside of relatives. Well, it sort of seems like the same thing, but okay, divided into 2 parts, great. That's the lion's share of it, okay, or the Rotary share of it, okay. Then they also come here because they're passing through town and they're tired. These are the big reasons. Well, and as it said in the study, there's nothing we can do to promote that. We can't promote that.
Yeah. Well, you know what you could do is you could email these people. You could stop everybody that comes into town, interrogate them about why they're here, get their email address, and then fire spam emails at them, encouraging them to come visit Aunt Martha more often.
Or put up a big sign saying, "You are getting tired." Sleepy the Bear. Remember Sleepy Bear?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Travelodge. You can't promote that. There's nothing you can do to promote it. And way down on the list was people coming here specifically for these particular rivers and these particular trees.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. What is the future of promoting tourism in Grants Pass?
Well, I'll tell you here. Let's examine why are we promoting tourism here in Grants Pass. I think we all understand the reason is we don't have any more timber money, and we don't have timber money because the BLM won't cut trees like they're supposed to, and then share that money with us like they're supposed to. And we had an economy here at that time, and now we don't have an economy. And I'm thinking, yeah, it was because they don't allow us to cut trees anymore. So if you'd like to kick off an economy, perhaps pursue the cutting of trees, because it's a business around here. We got money in the ground in the form of minerals, and they're about to lock those up for the next 20 years with the aim of making that permanent. And we have a bunch of, this is like fields of corn that we're not going to harvest because that would be bad, because there are bugs that live in the cornfields that we want to protect.
Sacred cows.
Right. Sacred cows in there. So then fire comes through and burns up all the corn, and then we wonder why we don't have any money.
We are in many ways like children of the corn. Now look, what you do instead is, Mike, get on board, as Simon Hare always says. Don't you realize that what we need to do is we need to hire a consulting firm from Portland called Echo Northwest.
Right. That's going to do
come
nothing.
in here and tell us, don't cut trees. Why, tourism is your most valuable thing for Grants Pass, and we're pooling our money. The county and the city are pooling their money so someone can come in and have a giraffe, whatever it is, different kinds of meetings, and they're going to tell us every good thing about our area, which is probably going to center around look at your trees and look at your rivers, when the survey of the people in the hotels and motels says that's not it. It's Aunt Jenny that lives here.
Right. No, you know what? This is, it's just plain silliness. And it's proof that governments don't understand what makes economies work. If they did, they wouldn't need to hire a firm to come in here and tell them what is going to work in your community. Well, I got an idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to repeat stuff,
Oh, okay. I never do that. Look, we already know they don't want to listen to our opinions. We could tell them for free. We do tell them for free all the time, but they don't want to listen to that. That's what this meeting proves. It's not so much, as we just said, so I'm repeating myself, it's not so much what they're now voting on. It's the way that they're doing it. They don't need to hear from the public. What, are you kidding? Now watch how they take the vote. This is a very unusual vote. Most of the time they vote, they just hold up their hand, okay, it's unanimous. This is changing an ordinance. If you're going to do that, you have a first reading and a second reading separated, so that people have a chance to chime in and think about it, and even they do. And then, if it's changing an ordinance, you have to call out each person's name. That's a little unusual, isn't it? Just like when we say to you, when there's something odd that happens there, that's what you look at. Because they're changing an ordinance, they have to call each person's name one at a time. Why? Because it's a serious thing, even if it's on a not so serious subject.
It's like polling a jury.
That's
Same
exactly.
thing.
So let's play a little more tape. You'll see.
Council of the City of Grants Pass, amending Municipal Code Section 4.05.240 and clarifying tourism-related facility definition.
Thank you. Roy?
I move that the ordinance be adopted.
Of course he does.
Seconded by Rick. Jim, should the ordinance be adopted?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. All right, item 5 is matters from mayor, council, and staff.
Now, let this next part just play right on through as soon as you're done.
Okay. Wow. That's it. Listen, I got to tell you something. You cannot have something like this happen without prior knowledge. And I believe that what's going on here is the staff puts this thing forward. Darren Fowler is completely on board with what the staff wants to do, and that's ram this thing through as fast as possible. And, they're all complicit there. I mean, anybody who knows anything about, listen, I don't know anything about the procedure, and I can see that there's something wrong with what's going on here.
Now, people are going to say, now, hold on a second. Wouldn't it be better streamlining? Okay, I've said many times that efficiency is the enemy of democracy. Okay, but wouldn't it be better when they're all in agreement anyway to just why clog up their calendars because they're such busy and important people with doing things in some established way? Let's get this on through. And the reason is because the people they're cutting out of the process are you.
Yeah. Well, and that's by design. I think the permanent bureaucrats in city government here, they run the show. They clearly run the show, and they're just ramming this thing through. And these other people are volunteers. They come in, they probably have a conversation about what we're going to do tonight, and briefly before they get up there, and that's about it. These people are just, we want to be on board and do the thing that, everybody expects us to do.
Well, and keep in mind, this is
Whatever.
what Jay Meredith said. Jay Meredith, he was one of the prime people behind the, all of these levies and taxes and everything else. He's the guy. Just to put that in context for you, he said, you haven't heard about this before at a workshop. They hadn't heard of it. This was, okay, again, it's a brand new idea. First time they've heard it, according to him. They have the introduction of the idea and the presentation. They have the first reading. They have the second reading, and they have the vote all in one meeting. Well, we haven't heard any opposition. No kidding, you haven't heard any opposition. We don't know anything about it.
Well, and there wasn't any open mic during the period between the time that they started talking about it and the time they took the vote, was there?
There was, and that's what I was saying. Just one person got up and said, you shouldn't be voting first vote, first reading, second reading. That's all that was said. There was nobody that knew anything more about it except the procedure. See, I'm a procedure guy. If you're not doing the procedure right, it doesn't matter if you're making lunkhead decisions. There's not even a chance to challenge any of it. Yeah. One person got up and said, don't do first and second reading in the same meeting. What's the matter with you? They listened to that and they ignored it. Why would they listen to people? Why would they listen to the voters? The voters are the same ones who were trying to tell them it was a bad idea for a sales tax. And look how wrong they were.
Considering how they wanted to ram this thing through, I would examine the heck out of that thing.
Absolutely.
And find out what's going on, because clearly you don't do something like this unless you're trying to get by transparency.
It's changing an ordinance. Speaking of Heck, Keith Heck had said one time in the past, we mentioned this before, why would we do anything other than what staff suggests? Well, the question should be, why would we be bucking the people and what they're suggesting? Because we're supposed to be, there are servants. not our
Right.
bosses. Despite what Rika Brown may say, I didn't pick these guys to be our rulers. Are you kidding me?
So if staff recommends everything and the people in leadership positions just rubber stamp everything, who's in charge there?
It would be Jay Meredith runs this
Yeah.
runs this local government. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And listen, I've kind of seen that about Jay Meredith for a long time, is that, I mean, he wants to steer things in a particular direction. He just has really super bad instincts about where to go with stuff.
Well, these are the same people that brought you these last few really bad ideas. And you'll see, and as they did with me, they've had it up to here with uppity citizens trying to tell them, please don't do this.
Right.
They don't want to hear that from us because this goofs up their plans. Great.
Well, and listen, here's the thing, is that all over America, this is going on and no one's paying attention.
That's why we brought you this boring subject, because it's not boring.
Yeah. You should be paying attention. Okay, so here we go.
Dan.
Yeah, I think during your opening comments about public comment, this is the time that we're allowed to discuss something that was brought up at any time. There's all kinds of places where your counselors can be contacted and things can be put on the agenda. I know that Rika said that's the time from the podium to do that. That's one opportunity to do that. If nobody does that, there's still ample opportunity. There's a vast opportunity for people to come forward to counselors, come either to myself, the counselor, the city manager, the mayor, any counselor will bring it forward, try to get it on the agenda. Another one is, one of the speakers said, well, you should limit it to just things that are on the agenda so people have a chance to talk about items that are on the agenda. There's public comment on everything that's on the agenda, so there's your opportunity to do that. We're not keeping people from talking about agenda items during public comment.
Yes, you are.
And then on the third point is this last one. My question to the public commenter was, what if we agree at the time of the ordinance? If it was a real tough one, I could see where we might have some question here. But as Councilor Roller brought up, this one was pretty darn cut and dry. It wasn't a big issue. So there's no reason for us to, just because we can, I think we're aware that we can put stuff off if there's some sort of a, where we don't then find ourselves in full agreement up here, we want more input, that we can put that off. We're aware of that. But to just put it off because we can, I disagree with that concept. So
Okay, so if they agree among themselves, why would they put it off?
Right.
Just because they can put it off, why would they? And somebody's probably asking, well, why would they? Just because they agree, who are they? God? No.
Yeah. You know what? And also, and not to take away from that point, I'll come back to that in a minute. But I've noticed this is kind of a running theme that, be they commissioners or be they city councilors, they really don't want you talking directly to them. It's especially in a place where they can't or aren't supposed to speak back to you right away, because. And they always say, you can email me, you can come to my office, blah, 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 where they can dismiss you or take you into a back room and pin you to the wall or something like that. That's how they like to do that. They don't really want you to have public comment in front of them. They don't want you to do that where other people can hear it, It's so bizarre. And I'd really like to examine deeper what is this problem that they have with hearing public comment. They really don't want to hear it at all.
And when they do hear it, they don't hear it.
Yeah. And this other thing where if they're all in agreement, that's fantastic. In a lot of cases, they're probably going to be all in agreement about a lot of the stuff that gets presented before them because they're more privy to it than the public is. But the whole idea of a first and second reading is to let the public into the loop, and they're circumventing that by slamming it through 1, 2, 3.
And this week they had something like 5 meetings. That's a lot. And all of them are closed to any kind of public comment except for this one.
Right. So they're clearly what you're saying is there's way too much public comment going on.
Yeah. Well, think how pesky that is, how disruptive that is, and why you have to stop people from talking. I keep getting stopped all the time. Was I super rude? There's somebody that I know that had checked with a couple of counselors in the background. Well, what was the problem? What was this thing with Dale Matthews? Oh, he was super rude. He was totally out of control. Totally out of control. Yeah, well, that kind of person should just not be allowed to speak. Really? Okay, I'm going to count that as a badge of honor. You decide. Sometime you can go take a look at this. I posted it and you can see for yourself. Where was the point at which I was totally screaming crazy out of control? I encouraged that guy to run, and he did. See, this kind of response from these guys who could just as easily they're not hearing it anyway. So if they just let it go, they'd be much further ahead. This guy now, partially based on that, decided to run. He can't run for city council because he doesn't live in the city. So he's going to run for county commissioner. Think how delicious it would be if this isn't going to happen. Come on, let's be realistic. But if the two of us came up and we were the next county commissioners. Hello, remember us?
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of promoting of this guy from you so far, and I know nothing about him. If all that has happened with you is that you met him at the podium,
no, I talked to him afterwards.
You don't know anything about it either.
I talked to him afterwards, and well, I like his general attitude, but you should talk to him. You should call him. You should talk to him. We could talk to him on the show. We could have him on the show.
Yeah, and we don't have anybody else on this show. Now, this seems all too convenient to me.
Okay, all right. Well, so I'll stop talking about him. I'm more impressed with him than I am with the city council.
Okay.
Now a couple other counselors have things to say. Go ahead.
The council for following through on that.
Valerie?
I actually kind of liked Ricky's comment about requests from citizen, just because I think public comment is kind of like broad. It's like so broad that it's kind of like just inviting what we have happening. A request for, from citizens is if somebody really has something that they want to put out there for us to consider for a later agenda. To me, it is more fitting at the beginning of the meeting, since we have public comment on everything that's brought up down the road. So I like that idea.
Yes, Roy?
To add a little bit to what Valerie had to say, the public comment period is, as it states in the written material, is a courtesy. There's nothing in state law that says we have to have public comment period. It's wide open. And so this has been a courtesy as long as I can remember, since I've been in Grants Pass. And the sad thing about a courtesy is that it can be abused. And I think that there has been more than a handful of instances where that abuse has been rather blatant.
Yeah, I was blatant.
I feel that you changing to what Rika said, requests from citizen, I think is a good step forward to more describe what we're really looking for than just quote unquote political or public comment, which is so broad that it has in the past gotten out of hand. So I also like that idea.
All right. Anybody else have a comment or committee liaison report or favorite color? Ken?
One thing I'd like to say is that I think maybe a request might be in order, rather than just open public comment. But under the Robert's Rules of Order that we adhere to in this meeting, it's not a freedom of speech issue. That's the way Robert Rules puts it. It is not a freedom of speech issue on the public comment, other than in probably when we're voting on an ordinance or when we have public comment there. But the open mic, it's not a forum, and it doesn't fall under the freedom of speech because it is a courtesy that we are allowing that we don't have to allow. So I follow with Roy and maybe with Valerie that maybe a change to request might be an appropriate change.
Okay, that's good advice from our lawyer. We're starting to debate a single issue. So,
yeah, they had to stop.
You know what? Listen, if you don't have enough motivation to want to replace these guys, hopefully this video has done that. This Valerie gal, she's brand new in there, one of the appointees, right?
Yes.
Amazing, and they hate public comment. They hate it.
They
don't want any public comment. Only if you're going to come up there and say wonderful things about them. They never hate that. And guess what? That takes exactly the same amount of time as it takes to come up there and say something that they don't like. For crying out loud. Listen, they are correct. They don't have to let you have the forum, but guess what? You're going to be thought a lot better of in the community if you do allow it. And thicken up your damn skin. What a bunch of thin-skinned, arrogant. Yeah, oh man.
Well, so
that's just amazing.
One of the things they thought about doing, and I try to be a little ahead of them, not hard, is everybody would have to fill out a card. Tony Webb suggested this once for this county. She said later, no, she didn't, but yes, she did. You fill out a card and you got to stick with that. And so what I do now is I routinely fill out a card and it says topic of speech, and I say criticism of city council. If they, hey, stick to the city, no problem. And if they say, well, you got to stick to the city, which I do. And then if they say, well, but you've got to make it a request. Okay, I request that you consider what I'm about to say. And then say it. It's a request.
Yeah, that request thing is just goofy. See, they don't want to deal with potential public humiliation.
Too late.
Listen, you took
that to themselves.
You took the job.
Yeah,
you did it to yourself. And listen, it's 3 minutes. Just buck up for 3 minutes. Gird your loins for 3 minutes. It's not that big a deal.
Well, look, okay. So to kind of sum it all up, all kinds of things we talked about tonight could fall flat on their face. One of them already did. And maybe optimism about a variety of things, letting us speak, some new guy running, other things that may be happening. Maybe none of those are going to happen. But it's nice to get to be a little ahead of the game would be great. And so I plan on doing what you've asked us to do, which is to kind of hold them accountable. And I don't intend to get up there and start slavering and calling them names and stuff like that. I get enough of that from our county commissioners. So I'll just go up, wear a tie, be polite, but also be firm with them and say, here's where things aren't going so well. You ought to do something about this. And they can just be Mr. Sensitive and react to everything and try to make up all kinds of rules, because they can't make a rule to leave out just one person. That's what they want to do. Mike?
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I got nothing to add.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We will keep you apprised of the news.